I do think we're seeing the broad outlines of a new way of talking about biology. And that's really what I mean by talking about the new biology. It's not some fantastic new theory that changes everything. It's an accumulation of little details in every area of biology, from genetics to cell biology to, how tissues grow and so forth, that in one way or another seem to me all to be pointing towards this same direction. It's time to look for new metaphors and tell new stories.
And that this idea that, yeah, biology is far less deterministic or kind of more diffusive in how cause and effect operates. And there's all these different kinds of things that kind of bump up against sort of the traditional ideas. And so maybe you can start by just talking about some of the ideas within biology that certainly are that are in the popular imagination that are just deeply wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are some ideas that are deeply wrong, but I think actually, more generally, the ideas are just they're starting at the wrong point of the narrative, or they're looking at it from the wrong direction. So it's not, again, it's not as though we have found some fantastic new discovery in the past 10
Right.
or 20 years that changes everything. It's really that we've drifted really from the old message. And I think I'm going to put it very simplistically because one has to, but I think the old message goes along the lines, and I think this is a message people are still hearing today. In fact, I'm very sure that it is, that the old idea was, there's this question of how are we put together? How does life work? It's this incredibly complex thing. These papers in Nature and Science and all the other journals make it look incredibly complicated, and it's full of details. But the message that we get to make sense of that is, never mind that. The fact is, we have this program, right? This informational program encoded in our genomes, in our DNA, that does everything. So, from birth, from the moment of conception, really, we start off as this single cell, this fertilized egg that gets the chromosomes, the DNA that contains all the instructions for building the organism. And that's the message. It's still up there on the site of the US National Institutes of Health, the department that looks after the Human Genome Project. They still talk about this instruction book in our genome, and that's the almost the universal metaphor that's used to talk about the genome. So everything we are is supposed to be encoded in DNA. That, I do think, is wrong, and I think it's wrong in ways that are not just misleading, but that are potentially dangerously so, because what it encourages, and people who work in this area, geneticists, they lament the fact that it encourages this, but nonetheless, it's out there. This message is out there and continually being reinforced. It encourages the view that what we are is our genomes, that defines us.